Since Nigeria's President Major General Muhammadu Buhari strode into the Aso Rock for his second term in office and started trampling norms, there have been a flood of analysis on the fall of democracy and the rise of authoritarianism. History is indeed replete with vivid examples of the decline of democracies. History has also shown that most democratic nations don't realize how serious the authoritarian problem is until it overtakes them altogether. We've seen this movie before, and tragically, history tells us most countries only recognize their authoritarianism problem in the rear view mirror after it's consumed their democracy. Here in Nigeria, we are beginning to see a serious authoritarian problem, and it's endangering all of us. It's closer than most of us realize. The plain and sobering fact of the matter is that Nigeria today is experiencing such a deep and potentially existential crisis of democracy. It is being amplified by the cowardice or opportunism of the legislative and judiciary arm of government, unwilling to honestly and openly confront the issues. Can Nigeria's democracy on the brink of authoritarianism recover? Can this democratic erosion be reversed? These and other issues confronting the Nigerian state is what we'll be looking at this edition of Sahara TV's Countermeasures. With us is a trade unionist and an activist for over 3 decades. He's also the co-convener of the Coalition for Revolution, Comrade Baba Aye. Welcome to the program, Comrade.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, Tokwe. Hello, viewers.
Groundswell of opinion against the Buhari government has continued to grow unabated over the hasty and extra-legal Twitter ban and suspension in retaliation over the deletion of Buhari's genocidal threat to a section of the country. Considering the historical antecedents of this president as a former military dictator, has he finally slipped back to his old habits? Your reaction?
I would say that his old habits never left him. The leopard does not change its spots. If you would recall, he started even with, during his first term, in dividing between those that gave him 5% and those that gave him 99%. So the corruption, the nepotism, the repression had started. But you're correct. It has gone from very bad to exceedingly terrible in the past few years. And this contributed to, if you would recall, it was in just before he's running for the second term, I think probably December 2018, if I'm not mistaken, that the Punch newspaper said, look, henceforth we're going to use his military title for him, Major General retired. You know, so it has always been there. And whilst I'll speak squarely on him, but it's always important, I believe, to put things in context about, because the context is, some will even say everything. It might not be everything, but it is useful for understanding the content of what is. And I'm very happy you started with a view of the world, how you see authoritarians marching and destroying democratic access and exercising of democratic rights by the masses. The point of departure is the current moment globally, as well as how things have historically evolved in recent times in Nigeria. You have seen in the past 10 years thereabout, let's say since the Great Recession, the financial crisis of the 2007 to 2009 period, you have seen both a rise of radical contestation from below, but also of authoritarian populism. It was this context that threw up the likes of Donald Trump in the United States of North America, Duterte in the Philippines, Modi in India, and so on and so forth. Now, these are because also the issue of authoritarianism versus democracy might not actually capture it well, because all these people came to power through quote and unquote democratic processes. You know, even Hitler came to power through democratic processes, but Hitler then abolished the formal democracy. But in recent times, you have had what some aptly describe as authoritarian populism. They appeal to the common man that you're suffering will stand up and fight for you, or to certain sections like some are 5%, some are 99%, because Buhari is the most nepotistic, openly nepotistic head of state the country has ever had. And it has contributed to worsening the national question. It has contributed significantly. Buhari is one of the persons that has contributed most significantly to the spate of agitation for separatism. You know, but we'll come to that later. So you see, this led the Freedom House to point out as of last year that for 14 years consecutively, global indices, democratic indices have been on the decline. So it is within this context that General Buhari arose as an authoritarian populist in Nigeria. And one of the things with authoritarian populists, they tend to try to exude an aura of power, an aura of being able to bring in law and order. You will remember, what's his name, Tinubu, during Buhari's first election process, said, when the country is in crisis, they call for their general. When America is in crisis, they look for Eisenhower. When France was in, they look for Charles de Gaulle, you know, generals and all that. So there's that, and it's also patriarchal in a sense, you know, there's that strongman mentality, and which is very, very common with all forms of fascism, be it the classical fascism of Benito Mussolini, Il Duce, Hitler, the Führer, or what we have now with the current authoritarian populists that some have described as post-fascism, a form of neo-fascism. What does this mean? Is that they come to power through the democratic means, they continue with the shell of democratic processes while doing everything they can to strangulate the contents of democratic rights. So circling back to your question, Buhari, it's not only that he never shed his old skin, it is also that he was brought as the best player within the ranks of the ruling class to fit into the era of contestation between revolution and reaction in the form of authoritarian populism. And that is the role he's playing as their own version of messy, and is making everything very messy because he's messed up in the head apart from other things. You know well.
Yeah.
You know well.
Now, let me take you up from there, because I mean, I like the fact that you pointed out the fact that Buhari is the most nepotistic president that we've ever seen. And one begins to wonder, maybe that is the reason why this crisis has escalated to the extent which you actually rightly pointed out earlier on, that and one begins also to see that he's also, I mean, this government has realized it messed up. A government that has realized that he has failed in all ramifications is now going into full dictator mode and unleashing tyranny on the citizen. I mean, for example, we had what Malami, I mean, did say, the Attorney General of the Federation, threatening that anyone tweeting is committing an offense. And when he was asked under what law, he said they will find out when they get to court. I mean, one begins to wonder, is this, I mean, for how long will they continue to unleash this kind of tyranny on the citizens?
Yeah, to answer your first question, yes, as I earlier said, Buhari's ultra nepotistic and ethnicist uh, kind of politics has contributed significantly to the crisis. In fact, the generalized crisis that Nigeria is presently embroiled in. But it is not, it is neither the sole nor even the main cause, but it is the icing on this blood-soaked cake. I say it so because the ruling class in Nigeria and in a number of multi-ethnic underdeveloped or underdeveloping countries, they play the ethnic card a lot, ethnic and religious card. If you cast them, and the thing is, different sections play it up to consolidate on their base in the fight between different sections of the ruling class on who maintains control. And this started even from the period, the decolonization process, when you had Ahmadu Bello made no bones about it, Northern People's Congress, Awolowo's action group started as Egbe Omo Oduduwa, and eventually even the Zik of Africa will become Owele of Onitsha, starting first with also turning the ethnic card onto the NCNC, which had started as a pan-Nigerian radical nationalist platform. So they have always played this card because it's difficult, if not outrightly impossible for them to face the masses and say, look, we are your oppressors, we are your exploiters. No, rather, they try to look for what we seem to share in common. Don't you see we are from the same ethnic group? Is these people from the other side that are oppressing us? Don't you see that we are of the same religion? That way, they not only mobilize behind themselves in their fight within each section of the ruling class, but they also then divide the ranks of the exploited and oppressed masses. So it is an important element of the divide and rule strategy of the ruling class to keep us divided and fighting against each other. To see, okay, the problem of the Yoruba, Igbo are all the Fulani people, then some of the poorer Fulani that are exploited and oppressed, like the poor in other parts, they are the likes of Buhari and his ilk. Can't you see these people are fighting you and your cattle? Fight them back. Then you now see the poor fighting against each other, killing each other. Cast your mind back to the Civil War. Who were the people who died? The children of the poor were the people that were Murutu and what have you in the army, and at the battlefront. And even when you had food and all that turned into weaponized, who were those that died from Kwashoko and all that? It was the children of the poor, across the two divisions, particularly in the East, in Biafra, where that strategy was very unfortunately utilized and against. The children of the high and mighty still fared well. And when the chiefs were down, the elites reconciled, leaving the poor to lick their wounds over a war that was not asked to fight. So, but to the other part of the question, which you gave a good example with Malami, and that's part of it. It's not, when we say Buhari epitomizes the regime. It is never just one person. It is a class, and that class rules through regimes. So we have an authoritarian populist regime that has little regards for law, even the law of its own class, and we have to fight it.
Now, considering the divergent views on the Twitter, on the Twitter ban by this president. Some of the opinion, some Nigerians are of the opinion that it's not about human rights, but about Twitter's right to censorship of the opinion of the president, saying that the president has a right, a freedom to say whatever he wants to say, and for Nigerians to disagree. First, I want to ask, is this a censorship issue? Or what do you think about that? And I also want you to also put into context the fact that Buhari, as the president, can exert an extreme amount of violence when he makes some of these statements. And we've had Nnamdi Kanu of IPOB spewing inflammatory and violent narratives on the Twitter. Why does Buhari has to invoke the language of the civil war by threatening violence?
Well, two very good questions. Let me start by looking at the issue of Twitter's rights, and so on and so forth. The thing is, every age, communication and transportation means are improved upon. Today Twitter is to us, Twitter, Facebook, what things like the printing press was to the French and Europeans generally during the French Revolution. Now, activists, revolutionaries, the oppressed classes have to utilize these means of communication as best as we can. And we have to, part of that is also fighting to democratize the space as well as control of this. But we should also be clear, that one, it is not this means of communication that fights, it is people, because some people have the idea that, look, it is with Twitter we fight, it is, no, these are tools for us to fight. Some have even described the Egyptian revolution as, no, it's human beings that fight. These are tools. Secondly, is that we should also not think because of this Twitter's part that, look, the owners of these means of communication are neutral. They are not. They also try to help define who, you saw this even in NSAS, where you had the endorsement of one or the other coalitions, and tacit playing down of the more revolutionary of the bodies involved there. And you see Facebook as in particular has even attacked radical groups, more shut them down. I've lost count of the number of times I have been, censored for absolutely no just cause. So we shouldn't have that illusion. But back now squarely to the issue of Buhari and the use of Twitter and his Twitter being put down, is when they say someone is Agbaya, I don't know the best way to translate this into English, but is dawdled in the head, because I mean, he didn't even have to get as base as that, but it shows you his inner workings. It shows you this man is a typical example of the kind of vampire that is just keen on sucking the blood of the sufferer. It shows the bestiality of Major General Muhammadu Buhari retired, that he could use such language. So he has absolutely that was not demonstration
but
of.
Now, one now begins to wonder. I mean, how hypocritical the president could be, because he has not used the same or invoked the same type of language against the bandits, the killer herdsmen, and the insurgents. I mean, isn't it ironical?
It's not ironical, but yeah, you are correct about his being hypocritical. In fact, correct in much more ways than one. It's not only that he has not used the same language against the bandits, is that don't forget that people have been arrested, including a 72-year-old man, simply for speaking ill against the president. There's this young man, the pharmacist, I'm trying to remember his name, I think Solomon, who was arrested for posting something online. There was a 72-year-old man. There are several others. Even some, it's for governors. And what they said is, I mean, compared to what he said, absolutely nothing. So if you could think that these people had to be arrested illegally, mark you for that matter, and detained, and yet he goes ahead to talk that nonsense about the civil war. It's hypocritical as well as dictatorial and later. With regards to the bandits and all that, you see, there was this meme that went viral at a point where a young boy was talking with his father, and he was like that he wanted to make money. I can't remember, but it was just like the father was saying something about crime and government are two sides of the same coin. You see, the bandits and the Buhari regime are actually two arms of the same body. And what do I mean by this? They both have as their primary aim keeping the masses oppressed and silenced. Fear. They are both merchants of fear as well as merchants of violence. Because all this repression and all that, it is to instill fear in us. And that is exactly what we must not allow. We must not be afraid. Now, we must march forward and fight.
One thing is quite consistent about this president is that he just wouldn't stop pursuing the idea of censoring people. I mean, and not even his advisors could actually stop him from that. Now, one begins to wonder if he can suspend Twitter, for example. What stops him from closing down and shutting down newspapers, TV stations, WhatsApp, Facebook, and other social media? And just yesterday, the NBC has just ordered broadcasting stations to suspend the use of Twitter or risk sanctions. And you know, out of sheer cowardice, we have found some of the TV stations already, another broadcaster already complying with that directive, that repressive ban. I mean, what stops this man, this president? If Buhari can suspend Twitter, what stops him from closing down and shutting down newspapers, TV stations, and other social media apps like WhatsApp and Facebook? Considering the fact, for example, just yesterday, the NBC ordered broadcasting station to suspend the use of Twitter or risk sanctions, and we've seen some of the media houses actually complying to that repressive ban. One begins to wonder, will this president toe that same path?
If he has his way, he will, quite obviously. You have seen steps in that direction already. You've had radio stations sanctioned, made to pay fine, Nigeria Info. You've had several television stations, including AIT and channels, also made to pay fines. If he had his way, he would shut down the television stations, newspapers, and all that. He has actually taken steps in that direction even before now. Radio stations like Nigeria Info have had to pay fines. Dark communication and channels. Don't forget also, they even increased the fee for so-called hate speech. And AIT was even shut down, I think 2 years back or last year. So the only thing that can stop him from getting away with this or thinking he has the confidence to do it, is to build a massive fight back against his repression. Is to mobilize and make it clear that, look, Nigeria belongs to we, the masses, not an usurper like him. In fact, few people have the right to say that they are even, he overthrew, he was part of a coup against the constituted authority, constituted government in 1983. His coming to power was illegal. He should be tried for treason. He's talking of trying, he should be tried for treason. He gave full support to one of the worst dictators in the history of Nigeria, Sani Abacha, working as the head of a parastatal that Sani Abacha established to help funnel, and saying that Sani Abacha was a saint. He lacks the moral or political authority to be head of state. And someone like him also lacks the sensibility. He could very well, we are in, as you rightly put it, full-blown authoritarianism on his part. And that is the more reason why we have to fight, mobilize, unite and fight. Working class people, the youth, this is the time more than ever in the history of the country that it is a choice between revolution and catastrophe.
Now, the Attorney General of the Federation, Malami, in a recent report by an online media organization, People's Gazette, talked about the fact that the Attorney General issued a memo with a proposal to suspend the Nigeria Constitution and declare martial law because of the insecurity in the country. We all know that Malami has always been his actions has always been against the Constitution. And you can imagine most of the handles that are related to the government. I mean, the contraventions, his actions has always been against the provisions of the Constitution. And now we are saying, even though he had actually, he was said to deny that there was ever a memo like that. The question that I would really love to get from you is that, should Nigerians be wary?
Definitely, Tokwe. Nigerians need to be very wary. One of the things, you see, when I became a student leader then, I found it strange that, look, people in authority lie anyhow. But I now realize that it is a very general thing with them. I saw it not only then with university management, but also those in government. And you see it, this government has time and again lied. Because the oppression itself is based on two things. It's based on repression, but it's also based on lies. Even when they give reforms, it is a lie to say that, look, this is the only way you can make it to be to have better life. So it's based on repression and lies. Malami, all of that, they are a bunch of bloody liars. He's denying it was, and at times also, this might be a leak, but at times they fly a kite. They fly a kite to have an idea of how will people take it when we do it. To what extent would they be ready to resist, and we should be ready to repress? So it should come as no surprise if they try to do it. But the extent to which oppressors can get away with their repressive measures is partly determined by the extent to which we are ready to fight.
No.
And that is what we shouldn't wait until then. Right now, that's why things like the June 12th protest for Saturday is important. That is why the strikes, by the trade unions, like for example, in Kaduna in particular, is very important, and why the workers should go ahead despite the threats by the military. So this we fight back. That's why the march on Tuesday, 8th of June, by the mechanics in Lagos against the demolition of their is important. All these are struggles that show them that, look, we won't take this. And the thing is, we need to unite these struggles. We need to unite all these big and small rivers of resistance into an ocean of revolution.
Now, the government's failure to arrest the security concerns, which has gotten worse, even by their own accounts, considering the fact that part of the excuses they give is the fact that, the Nigerian army itself is being undermined, and we have a weak police force. And consider the fact that we should be elevating this discourse beyond this point. The question has always been, what has happened to the legislative and the judiciary arm of government? I mean, these institutions are supposed to serve as checks and balances, and yet they have not issued any statements. And it's quite evident to Nigerians that these institutions themselves have also been undermined, considering the negative trajectory of both arms of government. We're talking about legislative and judiciary. I mean, what has happened?
You see, look at, you see my hand there. It's true that each of these three fingers can do different things, but they are all in one hand. The three arms of government, or the three fingers of the hand of government, all serve the purpose of projecting and defending the rule of the elite over and above the masses. Now, it is impossible to, because we, the masses, are many, the elites are few. Remember Occupy Wall Street and the 99% versus 1%. So even despite all their guns and what have you, which they use also, they realize that if they don't give some concessions, if they don't give an idea of that, look, you can get justice within their system, there will be greater fight back against their system. So to that extent, there are laws for them. But when you look at it, even the democratic rights that have been established, we have to fight for them. The courts were there during military dictatorship. It is true that several courts ruled against one item or the other, but was there any of them that said, military, you came to government by overthrowing the constitution, so therefore, military, you don't exist again? No. They blended with so executive, legislature, judiciary, they are separate, yes, but at a deeper level. Their difference is like the difference between Lucifer, Satan, and devil. You can argue that Lucifer, even though Lucifer is a choir master, Satan is not a choir master. Some might say the devil is more in the details, while Satan is more seated as the representative of the unholy trinity in the Aso Rock of hell itself. But they are all the same thing. So the judiciary is the Lucifer. They can sing very well, at times even sing good things. The Satan is the Aso Rock, is the hell, and the devil that is going around everywhere are the legislators that you have saying they are representing all of us in constituency. They are essentially the same thing. But this is not to dismiss away that we demand of legislators that we use the courtrooms as much as possible. We have had very fine, you see, even this issue of revolution now, that's even on the left, somewhere say, how can you be saying revolutionary? A justice, a judge, Judge Maureen, I can't remember her son, ruled that it was within the ambit of the right of those that call for revolution now, and even gave a 1 million naira money to the lawyer that took this case to court for so we can have leeway, but, and this is important, we should not have illusions that it is either the legislature or the judiciary that will save us from a rabid executive. It is we ourselves, through our struggle. And we cannot just say, we want to kick out the executive. Buhari must go is fine, but it's not enough. It is not even just about, we need to overturn the entire system, build people's power to be, because all of this, they are the same thing, they are the states, including the army, the police, which they use to push their will down our throats. We need a totally new system, a system based on democracy from below, a system where in our different communities, in our workplaces, those that are the people constitute councils. They can vote people that will represent at higher level, and they can easily recall them. Not like now that you have right of recall in the constitution, but everybody knows that to even be able to try to exercise it, you must be part of the elite, because you need a lot of money to do. People should be able to be the ones. When we say power to the people, by the people, for the people, it should not be the rich people that actually are controlling the power. No. And part of what we should also do with such is to make such offices less attractive. In a country where minimum wage, take home pay cannot take people home, look at the ostentatious amount. In fact, it is nauseating that these people walk home with 17 million, 25 million for legislators, for senators in the federal house, and then they work for 8 years or so, and they get pensions, the kind of pensions that people that work for 35 years can never get in 1,000 years. You know, so we need to make sure that those from be it executive, be it legislature, no one earns anything more than what an average worker earns. Corrupt practices should be stamped out, and those that still go ahead, they should see the eye of the tiger. It's not my mind that you see they will say they will charge it. How many of them have, all these people, they are walking around switching from PDP to APC, and then your sins are forgiven. Like the drop the mic, and all this. So we need fundamental system change.
Now, finally, because time is fast running now, Nigerians are set for a showdown with this government as June 12 uprising continues to gather storm. What pivotal role should democracy movements driven by civic activists play in forestalling the backsliding against this government's ever-tightening control of the political space?
Thank you so very much for that. You see, the June 12 moment for me is one that I feel very much, in a sense, sentimental about. I can say I played a number of roles. I was a spokesperson of the National Association of Nigerian Students during that period. I was also a leader of the Campaign for Democracy, having the privilege and honor to serve in the National Implementation Committee of the Campaign for Democracy, and later as a founding member of the United Action for Democracy. And looking at that and where we are now, I think one of the main problems why we fought for democracy, but then we have what we have now, is that the pro-democracy movement was clear about what we didn't want, but not clear about what we wanted. We were clear about fighting against power, but not fighting to win power. And that is what should guide the steps to take now. That is what a party like the African Action Congress and what a coalition like the Coalition for Revolution with its Charter for Total Liberation is clear about. We're not just mobilizing to kick out Buhari or mobilize. We are fighting to overthrow the system they represent. We are fighting to establish a government of the working people and youth. We're fighting to ensure that democracy will mean the all-round development of everybody and not the elite few getting away with the wealth created by our labor and stolen from our earth. So as we move forward, This is what I strongly believe should be central to our politics as we mobilize, as we organize, as we educate, and as we unite and fight.
Back to you as events continue to unfold in this country. Thank you so much, Comrade Baba.
Thank you so much.